Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the year again. That time of the year where everybody who's decided to take up reviewing stuff on YouTube decides, I'm going to talk about the best and the worst. Except in this instance, I decided to make sure that you know right out the gate that this is all a matter of opinion by instead calling it my most favorite and my most hated. Quick disclaimer, no, I haven't seen every movie that's come out this year. Nobody has. So if there's like this monumental blockbuster you think I should have put on the list, by all means, yell at me in the comments about it because I haven't seen every movie. So, I hope you enjoy this list. First up, when I first went to see the Lego Movie back in the day, I had nothing but the lowest expectations. There was no way this movie was going to be good. If anything, I was expecting it to be a mindless cash grab. The kind of movie where they put no effort, no heart, no soul, possibly even no direction. It's basically a 2-hour-long commercial for Legos, with a director who's not really directing so much as he's walking right up to the audience and saying, "Shut up and buy Legos!" Then I actually went to see the movie with friends, and it actually ended up being surprisingly good. Like, at first it ended up being okay. Like, it's not rewriting the world as I know it, but, it's like, okay, it's holding my attention. It's a nice little comedy. Maybe a good 2 out of 4, if you know what I'm saying. But then the big twist at the end, where it was revealed that everything was the kid's imagination this whole time, and him dealing with the fact that his father is a control freak who won't let him actually play with the Legos. He has to respect the fact that they're Lego sets and everything has a place, and the evil bad guy, whose name I forget at the moment, is basically a representation of his dad and all that. It's like, that kind of blew my mind. I did not see that coming. That ended up elevating it to epic status at the time, and I still love the movie. The Lego Movie 2 is on this list because I'm a sucker for the Lego Movie. If I were ranking these, I would be putting this at number 5, because while I do like the Lego Movie, let's be honest, it's a sequel. Even if a movie as good as the Lego Movie ends up with a sequel, it's still in direct violation of Jay Sherman's rule of movie-going that says never, under any circumstances, see a movie with the number 2 in the title. But sometimes I'm stupid and I do it anyway, and in the case of the Lego Movie 2, I'm actually glad I went to see this one. Granted, the epic twist at the end about Armageddon ended up actually being a bit predictable this time around, but to be honest though, the predictability had less to do with bad writing or anything that would actually be a detriment to the movie, and more to do with the fact that, well, it's a sequel. You kind of expect them to kind of recycle gimmicks like the big epic plot twist where the things going on in the Lego world are a parallel to what the kids are encountering in the real world and all that. It ended up being really good, I thought. It almost drifted into the category of yet another feminist lecture about toxic masculinity and how being a man is more dangerous than, just being open-minded and accepting the fact that maybe glitter and rainbows isn't such a bad thing. But fortunately, it turned out that's not the direction they went. Indeed, it appears that the twists don't stop at the live-action reveal with the parents and the kids. And that's really all I'm going to say about that. I highly recommend that you check out the Lego Movie Part 2. Maybe watch the first one first to get kind of an idea of what the sense of humor is like, or if you've already seen Part 1 to death, then you can probably just move on to Lego Movie 2. Whatever, just go see it. Next up. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, a romantic comedy actually just made my list. I'm scared too. Yesterday, though, had a really interesting premise. The idea that this weird blackout scenario where everything just goes black for a minute and then comes back just occurred, and then suddenly the Beatles disappeared from history. And the only person who remembers the Beatles is a guy who happened to be in a coma at the time the blackout took place, and as a result of being in the coma, he was somehow unaffected by the blackout. So he remembers all the songs. He remembers God, there's too many Beatles songs to name off. But you get the idea. The Beatles have disappeared from history, and this guy's the only one who remembers. And he ends up making an illustrious career by being the world's greatest cover musician for a band that technically doesn't exist in this timeline. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I was kind of expecting a little more. I mean, part of the reason I gave it a 3 out of 4 was because it kind of felt like they were just kind of glancing over the surface. Like, it seems like if the Beatles disappeared from history, a lot more would have changed. Like, can you imagine all the bands out there that wouldn't be around if the Beatles didn't exist? I mean, I guess the Rolling Stones still exist, and that's a feud that probably never happened. I mean, Beatles versus Rolling Stones, that feud doesn't exist, so who do the Rolling Stones go up against? The Iron Butterfly? I don't know. It also makes a few gags about how, there's no cigarettes either, and how there's no such thing as Harry Potter as a result of the blackout event, and it seems like that would also be a very interesting path to explore, but we don't really explore it because it's just a tee-hee LOL kind of gag, and I don't know, that's fine, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, if you're just playing it up for laughs, but at the same time, there's a very small part of my brain that wonders, well, wait a minute, what is the world like now that there's no cigarettes? I don't know. The only thing I can really tell you right out the gate is there's probably no such thing as vaping, but that's about it. If you shut off your brain, though, and you don't worry about what the world would be like if the Beatles didn't exist outside of the general premise of this movie, it's actually a pretty good movie. I actually liked it quite a bit. I think the only real negative I could say about the movie, outside of my personal neurotic tendency to wonder out loud, well, wait a minute, you said Harry Potter doesn't exist. What's the world going to be like without Harry Potter? The only real negative I could think of was probably the record executive character. I mean, could you be more transparently evil? Like, I get it, it's a comedy, yeah, and I get it, rom-coms aren't exactly known for being intellectual, but I mean, when the lady is all like, oh, for the love of money, will you just stop that? Ah! It's like, come on. It's like, I know we're all hating on capitalism right now, but even capitalists don't talk this way. God, I hope not. It seems like I'm kind of dumping on the movie a lot, but honestly, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It was probably the best thing I saw this summer, and considering this was a summer that gave us another Men in Black movie and another Toy Story movie, what does that tell you? It tells me that either I didn't see the Toy Story movie, or it tells me that the summer was actually kind of a letdown this year. Anyway, next movie. Probably one of my more controversial picks, if only because Joker is one of those movies you either really love or you really hate. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things about the Joker, specifically that, it's not very accurate to what the 80s was really like because, there was no such thing as viral video in the 80s, there's no such thing as Occupy Wall Street in the 80s, and, if this medication this guy was on was accurate to the time period, he would be unconscious because therapeutic medication was totally a different substance. Nerd! There's people who say that this movie was designed specifically to troll the libs, and I guess I could see that, but at the same time, I think if the mission was to troll the libs, I think they failed miserably because Michael Moore, the libbiest lib who ever lived, apparently saw the movie and said he actually encouraged his following base. He encouraged his followers to go see this movie. Yeah, mission failed if that was what you were going for. Honestly, I didn't go in expecting this movie to be brilliant political commentary. I didn't expect this movie to be really all that deep even, but it ended up being one of my favorite movies of the year, honestly. I enjoyed watching this movie from start to finish. And I feel like that's an impressive feat, considering how utterly tired I am of superhero movies and comic book movies here in the current day. The Joker really felt like a much different movie from what we've been seeing from the DCU and Marvel, if only because it's basically the king of comedy starring the Joker. And if you're gonna rip off some movie in order to give your most infamous villain a very awesome vehicle, why not go the Scorsese route? I mean, it's not like he has some sort of beef with superhero wait a minute. In any case, it's a really good vehicle. I mean, what did they do for the Venom movie? Make it basically a buddy cop movie that didn't work. It felt like it was 20 years out of date when it was new. Oh man, but the Joker. I loved this movie. It was pretty good. I did a review of this movie earlier in the year, and I'm trying my best to not recycle everything I said in that review, and I'm really struggling. Basically, go see this movie. It's one of my favorite Marvel DC comic book movies of the year. I highly recommend it. Next up, you know, if you told me at the beginning of the decade one half of the comedy duo Key and Peele was going to move on to make horror movies, I'd have probably looked at you and said, who the fuck are Key and Peele? Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't really follow Comedy Central all that much this past decade. I mean, I still watched South Park, I watched a bit of The Daily Show all the way up until Trevor Noah took over, and to mention the Colbert Report got canceled and it got replaced with The Opposition. Do we really need to parody InfoWars? InfoWars just seems like a parody of itself, you know what I'm saying? But I digress. Basically what I'm trying to say is I'm not especially familiar with Key and Peele. I only ever looked up sketches of theirs long after the duo disbanded and Jordan Peele went on to make movies. In particular, he made Us, which I gotta say is hands down my favorite horror movie of the year. Jordan Peele is one of those horror directors in the modern day who is hyped to the moon, and whenever he puts out a movie, gotta guarantee that everybody and their mom is gonna go rush out and see it, even if they don't like horror, because apparently Jordan Peele is the biggest thing since sliced bread. So, you know what? Challenge accepted. I went and saw Us, and it ended up being one of my favorite horror movies of the year. It was just fantastic. I loved this movie. Nothing feels like it's there just cuz. Everything has a purpose. Even the frequent usage of 11:11, which is a Bible quote according to my girlfriend. I couldn't tell you what the quote is anymore off the top of my head because I honestly haven't read the Bible in years. This is one of those movies that got hyped to the moon, and it's one of the rare instances of a movie getting hyped to the moon that actually deserves the hype and lives up to the hype. I feel like this movie is really worth your time. It is horror at its absolute best, and let's be honest, the horror genre has given us a lot of duds. I swear to God, if one more Conjuring demon gets its own spin-off movie, just one more! Last, but far from least, you gotta love a movie that goes a bold direction, like, hey, let's make a comedy about Nazi Germany. I mean, seriously, the word Nazi gets thrown around a lot these last couple of years. And a lot of the times, it doesn't even have to do with legit anti-Semitic attitudes and the belief in the Aryan race as a superior species. It really has more to do with the fact that, oh my god, you actually agree with Donald Trump on one thing. You are a horrible human being and we need to hang you at the gallows right now. How dare you respect someone other than the lady goddess Hillary Clinton? Ugh, I can taste the hate mail already. When I heard the premise of Jojo Rabbit, I wasn't really expecting it to be good. I wasn't really expecting it to be bad either. I was just expecting it to be dark, depressing, not funny. like they're I don't mean like in the sense like Tim and Eric, you know, painfully unfunny because it's anti-comedy. It's funny on it's not funny on purpose. No, I mean like these jokes would probably register if it weren't for the fact that everybody was dying. You know what I'm saying? That kind of dark gallows humor. I knew it was going to be dark, and I'm not going to lie to you, it gets really dark, especially in the third act when it becomes very clear that the Nazis are in over their head and they really have no idea what they're doing, and Hitler has basically already swallowed his gun, and the party is kind of left directionless and kind of trying to figure out what to do at this point. But at the same time, you know, despite the darkness, this ended up being my favorite movie. Not just in the comedy genre, not even just in the whole Nazi exploitation genre, if that's still a thing. I would say this is probably my favorite movie all year. In fact, if I was ranking these movies, this would definitely be my #1 pick. I highly recommend that you go see this movie if you get the chance. You know, go see it if it's in theaters at the time of this recording. Go get it on Blu-ray or DVD. Go whatever streaming service happens to be playing it. I mean, hell, just see this movie. I loved it. I highly recommend it more than any other movie on this little list of mine, and a lot of these movies were also pretty good, but they were pretty, but this one right here. That's going to do it for my most favorite of 2019. Come back next time and I'll share with you my most hated. And I promise I will try my best to not go on incoherent rants, because these movies, some of them in particular, were really bad. But in the meantime, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you felt like there was a movie I should have seen that probably deserved to be among these favorites, by all means, put it in the comment box. And if I haven't seen it already, I'll give it a watch. A watch? I'll give it a watch. Great way to end your video, Tommy. Just put it on an outtake. Whatever.